admired for her talent, and remembered as one of the biggest stars in the golden age of Hollywood. In 1939, the major studios here in Hollywood were turning out a bumper crop of classics. The Wizard of Oz, Dark Victory, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. But the main topic of conversation on these back lots was the upcoming epic Gone with the Wind. According to a Gallup poll taken at the time, more than 50 million Americans couldn't wait to see it. But as the picture neared its first days of filming, the most important part was still not cast. Who would play Scarlett O'Hara? David O. Selznick reached far beyond the list of likely candidates to Vivien Leigh. The role was perfect for her, and it's impossible to envision anyone else in it. But Leigh was never comfortable on these backlots and movie sets. As she put it in her understated way, "I loathe Hollywood." The day after her death in 1967, Vivien Leigh received the highest honor given by London theaters. The lights lining the city's West End theater district went dark for 1 hour.
There was nothing of the star thing about her. No, she was a trooper, and it shone through. There was no one-upsmanship, ever. No, about that lady.
And what she was always told was, "You're such a beautiful woman." And what she wanted to be told was that she was a great actress.
She was special. Sorrow brought her stature, and she certainly had something special.
The woman best known for her portrayals of American Southern belles was born Vivien Mary Hartley on November 5, 1913, in Darjeeling, India. Her father, Ernest Hartley, had left England in search of his fortune and had prospered as an exchange broker in Calcutta. It was there that he met his wife, Gertrude Yakchi, an Irish beauty born and raised in India.
Vivien said that she was part Indian. I think the part was much smaller than people have presumed because of Mrs. Hartley's maiden name.
Vivien might have had Armenian ancestry, or she might have had Parsi Indian ancestry. It's all got a little bit muddled in the passing of time.
The Hartleys enjoyed a privileged existence in colonial India and doted upon their only child. Vivien was never lonely. Gertrude's vivid imagination ensured that she would always be entertained. But the happy days in India didn't last long. At age 6, Vivien was sent to England to begin her formal education at the Convent of the Sacred Heart in Roehampton.
Oh, the school was apparently just awful. They had to take baths and wear their clothes in the baths. They had special, like, suits that they would wear or nightgowns in the baths. And it was very, very strict and cold and one of those awful English convent schools.
Vivien missed her parents, but as the youngest girl in school, found comfort in the nuns who pampered her. She also made many friends, including future actress Maureen O'Sullivan, and was voted by her classmates the prettiest girl in school.
She wasn't vain at all, and I think she felt that it was almost made people a little bit inhibited, you know, and so she would do everything that she could to make people feel at ease, and there was no vanity about her.
She was meticulous about everything. She was meticulous how she looked, what she wore, what she said, how she behaved to people.
Vivien cultivated a wide range of interests at school, including ballet, Greek mythology, and playing the cello. Unlike most girls there, she had ambitions beyond marriage.
Vivien always wanted a career, and I think my mother kind of wanted a career, but nothing like the 7-year-old Vivien, when she came to that school, told my mother right then and there she was going to be famous.
The ambitious teen never forgot seeing legendary actresses Eleonora Duse and Elizabeth Bergner perform on stage.
She said she saw both these women, and they shaped her future. She decided that's what she wanted to be. That's when it happened.
At 15, Vivien left Roehampton to pursue a more itinerant education. For the next 3 years, she attended convent schools and finishing schools in Italy, France, and Germany. The cosmopolitan young woman who emerged relished her youth, but was anxious to pursue her dream of acting. She enrolled at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in May of 1932. That same year, while visiting a friend in the country, she met a handsome lawyer named Lee Holman.
He was actually very much on the rebound from something else at the time, but when Vivien wanted something, she was extremely determined about it.
19-year-old Vivien soon won the affection of the 32-year-old Holman. The two were married in a Catholic ceremony on December 20th, 1932. But her first love remained acting, and Vivien continued at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. Her training was briefly interrupted when she gave birth to a daughter, Suzanne.
Suzanne was brought up by her grandmother, and Vivien, I never thought, was cut out to be a mother at all. She was not maternal in the sense that women become maternal. Maybe she'd had her daughter too soon, I don't know.
Before Suzanne celebrated her first birthday, her mother earned her first film role in Things Are Looking Up. She had one line.
Lee Holman didn't want her to go into acting, but because in a sense this was like, you know, this, in a sense it was another escape. The first escape was like from the parents, and the second escape in a way was from Lee into this world of acting.
She borrowed from her husband to create a stage name, Vivien Leigh, and continued to get small parts in secondary British films. But her dream was to perform on the London stage. In 1935, Vivien Leigh became an overnight sensation in only her second play, The Mask of Virtue, in which she played a prostitute pretending to be a model of innocence.
But that heart-shaped face was so beautiful. And I think she could have modeled for anybody the rest of her life. But I think the talent shone through because she wasn't about to hang back. She had a mission in life, and that was to be an actress, and a good one.
You know that I'm in love with you, don't you? No, I'm sorry, I won't talk like that anymore, I promise you. I won't even mention the word love. There's something else I want to talk to you about, not love. Please, please, listen to me.
By that time, another young actor had already made a name for himself in England. Laurence Olivier's resounding success in the 1934 stage production of Theatre Royal had caught the attention of 20-year-old Vivien Leigh.
She was first introduced to him in the Savoy Grill Room when he was having lunch with my mother. She was dining with her husband, Lee Holman, and had taken a great fancy to my father and was absolutely determined she was going to marry him. My father said as soon as he set eyes on her, he felt darkly disturbed, this very moral man. And he was.
Everybody knew. Everybody in London knew. Whether it was the thing to do or not, I don't think in 30s England it mattered. Everybody was doing it. Or Cole Porter would say, let's do it, let's fall in love. And that's exactly what Vivien and Larry did.
In August of 1936, with Olivier's wife about to give birth, Vivien and Larry began filming Alexander Korda's Fire Over England, a love story set amidst a battle in Elizabethan times.
I can't.
Michael.
I can't.
We have a right to be happy. Everyone's a right to be happy, Michael.
Everyone, yes. That is why we can't be.
Michael. Michael.
Yes, dearest, of course we have a right to be happy. Husband and wife sitting by the fire, listening to the crackle.
Yes, I think people did root for them, which is very sad for Jill Esmond, for his first wife, and I suppose for Vivien's husband, but that's the way things happened.
In 1937, Vivien made 3 films for Alexander Korda, including 21 Days, her second pairing with Laurence Olivier. The film was so bad the producers released it 3 years later, and then only because the actors had become famous. In May, the young lovers traveled to Denmark to perform Hamlet at Kronborg Castle in Elsinore. Upon their return, Vivien and Olivier left their respective spouses and shared a London flat. The two were inseparable. When Olivier agreed to do Wuthering Heights in America for director William Wyler, Vivien asked to play Kathy opposite Olivier's Heathcliff. Wyler said no, but offered her a smaller part.
Well, she said, I'll play Kathy or I'll play nothing. I said, look, I tried to talk her into it. I said, look, Vivien, you're not yet known in America. Someday you may be a great star, but you're not yet known. And for a first part, you'll never get anything better than Isabella. I made this deathless prediction. I guess she showed me.
Gone with the Wind, Margaret Mitchell's epic tale of love and war, was the best-selling American novel of 1936. That same year, producer David O. Selznick bought the film rights to the book and began a much-publicized search for the story's heroine, Scarlett O'Hara. Back in England, Vivien Leigh had read the bestseller and knew she was perfect for the part.
Here's news for which you've been waiting. Names of the winners in our Scarlett O'Hara contest. First, here are the names of the 6 actresses who received the largest number of votes for the role. Bette Davis first, Katharine Hepburn second, Miriam Hopkins third, Margaret Sullivan fourth, Joan Crawford fifth, and Barbara Stanwyck sixth.
Headlines. I don't care what city you're in. Headlines would be in the paper about Gone with the Wind and the casting of it. The country wanted Clark Gable. They were torn about Scarlett. I mean, there was many choices as there were actresses.
Quiet, speak.
Oh, Ashley, I was wondering where you were keeping yourself. And to think of just running into you like this.
You went for more, Jack.
More than a year ago, I revealed that Paulette Goddard had made tests for the role of Scarlett O'Hara and that David O. Selznick had signed her to contract. Today, an executive of the Selznick organization tipped me off that Miss Goddard is definitely set for the role, and official verification will be made within 2 weeks.
But when Selznick began filming The Burning of Atlanta on December 10th, 1938, he still had no Scarlett O'Hara. Vivien Leigh had submitted her name for consideration as early as 1937, but was not a serious contender for the part.
When you imagine that this young English actress, not so well known in the United States, was pitching herself against Bette Davis and company for this role. But she told me later that she really had no doubt that she would get it.
A confident Vivien followed Laurence Olivier to Hollywood in November of 1938. He was there to film Wuthering Heights. She was there to meet David O. Selznick through his brother Myron, who was also Olivier's American agent. Myron Selznick brought Vivien Leigh to meet David on that first night of shooting. Upon introducing her, Myron said, "Hey, genius, meet your Scarlett O'Hara." Selznick and the director, George Cukor, were impressed. Vivien had the same dark hair, green eyes, and magnolia white skin as described by Margaret Mitchell. They tested her immediately. "25-year-old Vivien Leigh beat out thousands of women for the most coveted role in film history. She signed a 7-year contract with David Selznick and began filming Gone with the Wind in January of 1939.
But I was so impressed with Vivien Leigh as an actor. I would see them, because it was being rewritten all the time. So there were new pages being given out. And Scarlett would have endless pages. Every scene would be filled with her dialogue. I would see her take these new scenes. I swear she would read them, put them aside, and become Scarlett O'Hara.
She said, it was so tiresome. She said because it was new Technicolor, the cameras were huge, and the lighting was so terribly bright, and I must have lost pounds. And she said, because I wanted to finish, it gave Scarlett that I think, energy and restlessness that was needed for the part.
Why don't you say it, you coward? You're afraid to marry me. You'd rather live with that silly little fool who can't open her mouth except say yes, no, and raise a passel of Minnie Mouse breath just like her.
You mustn't say things like that about Malin.
Who are you to tell me I mustn't? You led me on. You made me believe you wanted to marry me.
Now, Scarlett, be fair. I never at any time...
You did. It's true, you did. I hate you till I die. I can't think of anything bad enough to call you.
Vivien wanted to do justice to the heroine created by Margaret Mitchell and worked tirelessly on her performance. She was so convincing as Scarlett O'Hara, people often confused her with the role.
Scarlett was petulant and determined and wanted things. I mean, Vivien was more intelligent than Scarlett. Vivien was more logical, I think, and probably wouldn't have got things wrong in the way that Scarlett did.
2 weeks into filming, Selznick replaced George Cukor with Victor Fleming, a no-nonsense director who also happened to be one of Clark Gable's best friends. Vivien wrote home saying, "George Cukor was my last hope of ever enjoying the picture."
It was true that both Vivien and Olivia de Havilland would call Cukor, and they would tell him what scenes were coming up there, what they were going to shoot the next day, and he would virtually direct them over the telephone.
Look at me and try to tell me the truth. Did you say yes because of my money?
Well, yes, partly.
Partly.
Well, you know, Red, money does help, and of course I'm fond of you.
Fond of me?
Well, if I said I was madly in love with you, you'd know I was lying. But you've always said we had a lot in common.
Yes, you're right, my dear. I'm not in love with you any more than you are with me. Heaven help the man who ever really loves you.
Laurence Olivier saw Vivien only twice during the last 4 of the 6 months she spent filming Gone with the Wind. David Selznick forbade the adulterers to be seen together in case the gossip columnist discovered their affair. The forced separation was difficult for Vivien, who had to endure hours of color test and speech lessons, in addition to long days of shooting. Vivien completed filming Gone with the Wind in June. Not wanting to go through another long separation from Larry, she insisted on testing for a part in his next film, David Selznick's Rebecca.
And Vivien said, I wanted to do it because I would be working with Larry. And she insisted on testing for it. She was totally wrong. Too strong for this little woman's companion.
I can't help being shy. But I do hate people looking me up and down as though I were a prize cow.
Oh, who looks you up and down?
Everybody.
What does it matter if they do? It gives them some interest in life.
But why should I be the one to supply all the interest and have all the criticism?
Because life at Mantle is the only thing that interests anybody here.
What a slap in the eye I must have been to them then. I suppose that's why you married me. Because you knew I was dull and quiet and inexperienced. And that there'd never be any gossip about me.
Vivien lost the part to Olivia de Havilland's sister, Joan Fontaine.
Gala days in Dixie. Streamlined Wings of the Wind bring Hollywood to Atlanta for a history-making world premiere of the motion picture epic Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind premiered on December 15, 1939. Vivien flew to Atlanta for the screening, accompanied by Laurence Olivier, who was allowed to attend as publicity for his upcoming Selznick film, Rebecca.
They say that when he saw Gone with the Wind, he was amazed, astounded, full of admiration, and absolutely furious, because he realized that actually she was extremely good, and she was very, very good on film.
Who will win the Academy Awards? The tension grows and grows. Little else is thought of, little else discussed.
Need I say it is a privilege and an honor to announce this winner, Miss Vivien Leigh in Gone.
Ladies and gentlemen, please forgive me if my words are inadequate in thanking you for your very great kindness. If I were to mention all those
who've shown me such wonderful generosity through Gone with the Wind, I should have to entertain you with an oration as long as Gone with the Wind itself.
At 26, Vivien Leigh had won an Academy Award for Best Actress. Gone with the Wind won a total of 9 Oscars, eclipsing all other films that year, including Wuthering Heights, for which Laurence Olivier was nominated for Best Actor.
He always put down films and told her, he said, we belong on the stage. And I think he was a little put out about her being so valued as Scarlett O'Hara. Well, he was doing Wuthering Heights, but all the attention went to Gone with the Wind. And he said, now, when we get finished, you and I, we're going to New York, and we're going to do Romeo and Juliet. And I'm going to teach you to be the best Juliet ever.
Laurence Olivier and Vivien Leigh not only starred in Romeo and Juliet, but they also invested $96,000 of their own money in the production. The play opened on Broadway on May 9th, 1940, to mixed reviews. Advance publicity promised theatergoers they would see real lovers make love in public, but bad word of mouth forced the play to close after only 35 performances.
He had just done Wuthering Heights, and she had just done Gone with the Wind. And the critics slated that production and criticized her and her voice and him and his acting. And what wouldn't we all give to see that production? How bad could it be?
The lovers had failed on Broadway but found happiness in their private lives. After years of waiting, Vivien and Larry were finally granted divorces from their respective spouses. Vivien remained friendly with Leigh Holman, who retained custody of their daughter.
She didn't talk about her relationship with Suzanne. I know she loved her daughter, but I think there was a feeling of guilt there, you know. I mean, she left her husband and her daughter.
Newly divorced, Vivien and Larry drove up the California coast to the San Ysidro Ranch near Santa Barbara. They were married shortly after midnight on August 30th, 1940, with Katharine Hepburn and Garson Kanin as witnesses. The newlyweds spent their honeymoon on Ronald Colman's yacht.
As she described her wedding night, and I was surprised. After they got married in Santa Barbara, she says, now we were legit. We were legitimate. We were husband and wife. And we, all night long.
Vivien Leigh had achieved worldwide acclaim as Scarlett O'Hara and had finally become Mrs. Laurence Olivier. But maintaining her newly acquired status would prove to be more difficult than her struggle to attain it. In 1939, England entered World War II, and the Oliviers felt they should do their patriotic duty at home. Vivien returned to England with her husband, ignoring her 7-year contract with David Selznick.
So if she just wanted to capitalize on her so-called reputation, you know, as a film star, then she could have gone on and played lots of different parts like a lot of those Hollywood actresses did, and life would perhaps have been a lot easier for her. But she was always wanting to strive to learn new things and to take on different roles, and of course particularly always wanted to be with Olivier. I mean, she liked being with Olivier in life, and she liked acting with Olivier on stage whenever possible.
Vivien returned to her first love, the theater, for a production of George Bernard Shaw's The Doctor's Dilemma. It opened in London on March 4th, 1942.
She was there for about a year and a half. People used to go around to see Scarlett O'Hara and on the film, and then immediately they'd realize that you could go and see the actress in the flesh, you know, on the London stage. So that, of course, ran and ran and ran.
I think she was accepted as a popular and efficient little actress, but she wasn't one of the great Sarah Bernhardts or anything like that. I don't think she was a critic's actress. She was a people's actress.
In 1943, Laurence Olivier scored his first film triumph as both an actor and director with his version of Henry V, and went from matinee idol to serious filmmaker. He and Vivien bought an English country home, Notley Abbey, which had been endowed by Henry V.
It was a very happy place, with a strange kind of exhausted sexuality to it. The rooks made a sorrowful sound, and the trees were noble and overextended at the end of their lives, beginning to die back. And it was a bit damp, which is sexy too, in a way. The rivers and the misty feeling to it.
They lived completely differently. I mean, they lived, on the whole, they lived very, very social lives. And she loved having people around her.
They had parties and they told jokes, and all these actors, you can imagine. I mean, Noel Coward, Douglas Fairbanks, Larry and Viv, my father and mother. I mean, and they would have these wonderful parties, and I can tell you the jokes were bawdy.
She would try to keep the guests up and going, and she was, you know, a wonderful hostess, but very, very, she couldn't relax.
But she was an insomniac, always. And he had to sit up with her. And he was not an insomniac. She only needed about 3 or 4 hours a night. Very difficult for him.
In 1944, David Selznick loaned Vivien to director Gabriel Pascal to star in Bernard Shaw's Caesar and Cleopatra.
It's the story of a girl who was a queen, but who stopped at nothing to get her own way, even with the man who had conquered her.
During filming, Vivien discovered she was pregnant. She had hopes that a child would bond her and Olivier for the rest of their lives. But while filming this scene, Vivien slipped and fell. 2 days later, she lost the baby.
Larry's baby, it was a dream, of course. And I think that's what made her manic depression come forward.
Bipolar disorder is one of the disorders which we call diseases of mood, and it is characterized by shifts in mood, ranging from severe, deep, pervasive depression to euphoric highs.
But they were always in troubles because she had this illness, which I didn't really know about, which took over her whole life. She was always having miscarriages and having moments when she wasn't quite all there. It was all kept very much from the public.
Anxious to get back to work, Vivien signed on to do Thornton Wilder's The Skin of Our Teeth, with Laurence Olivier directing. She received good reviews, but had to leave the play after 78 performances. One friend noticed that she had become strangely overtired and alarmingly thin. Doctors discovered a tubercular patch on one of her lungs. After spending 6 weeks in the hospital, she retreated to Notley Abbey for 9 months of recuperation. Vivien's illness, as well as Olivier's singular commitment to work, had already caused problems in the marriage. The Oliviers found comfort in separate projects. He in Hamlet, and she in a remake of the Tolstoy classic Anna Karenina.
Is he here?
What if he is? I don't think of him. For me, he doesn't exist anymore.
Why should we have to whisper?
What does it matter? The only thing that matters to me in the world is your love.
Critics said Vivien failed to portray the feelings of love necessary for the character, and the film was considered a beautiful failure. Vivien's film career seemed on the downturn as her husband star continued its meteoric rise. At 40, Laurence Olivier became the youngest British actor to be knighted by the King.
When he had this marvelous success, and she felt she had to keep up with him, it was a big strain for her. And she was always feeling that he didn't think her very good.
Olivier, beyond the stage, it's very hard really to know what he was or who he was, whereas Vivien was a much more rounded, much more interesting person as a whole, because you know, she read everything and could talk about anything, and you know, was a great friend of people like Kenneth Clarke and Bernard Berenson and all sorts of very interesting people.
The Oliviers, now considered the royalty of English theatre, consented to do an 8-month tour of Australia and New Zealand. In his autobiography, Olivier wrote, "Somewhere, somehow on this tour, I knew that Vivien was lost to me."
There was a lot of conflict in that marriage, And I think she wanted him constantly with her, and to be, I think she wanted to direct him in a way, and yet he was her mentor.
Just at the time when the myth of the Oliviers, you know, the sort of great love story and everything was taking off in the popular imagination, was probably the time when it was beginning to crumble inside and had to be sustained as a myth. I mean, this is one of the things which quite often happens in these famous theatrical partnerships.
"11 years after Margaret Mitchell introduced Scarlett O'Hara to the world, American playwright Tennessee Williams wrote a story about another Southern belle, Blanche Dubois, an older woman who suffers a mental breakdown as her world crumbles around her. A Streetcar Named Desire opened on Broadway in 1947, starring Jessica Tandy as Blanche and newcomer Marlon Brando as Stanley Kowalski. The play was a hit, sought after by companies wanting to produce it in other cities. In the same single-minded way Vivien Leigh pursued the role of Scarlett O'Hara, she now set her sights on playing Blanche Dubois in the London production of Streetcar. She won the part and convinced Laurence Olivier to direct the play.
And she would, of course, take it all very seriously. She would read all round the part and absorb as much as she could. And then, of course, she would always listen to Olivier. Whatever he had to say on the matter was gospel as far as she was concerned.
A Streetcar Named Desire opened on October 11th, 1949, and ran for a total of 326 performances.
It was terribly killing for her to do that. Every night to come apart, that mental collapse on the stage. She did it night after night.
Larry was very criticized for letting her do that because of her mental problems, and he thought that it might actually help her confront them, which she had so far refused to do. At that time, they had no civilized cure. I mean, she had electrodes on her temples and burn marks where they had been.
This is the story of a woman, Blanche Dubois, who wanted so much to stay a lady.
In August of 1950, 36-year-old Vivien Leigh flew to Hollywood to star in the film version of A Streetcar Named Desire.
I sort of accepted it, that they would choose Vivien to play Blanche over Jessica, because I think they were reasonably sure the film would be an artistic success. But they also wanted it to be a financial success. And at that time, Jessica was really not known to film audiences. And of course, Vivien was.
Except for Vivien, the film's cast was made up entirely of actors who had performed the play in New York. Director Elia Kazan found working with his new star challenging.
Why are you so sensitive about your age? Because of hard knocks my vanity has been given.
She was sitting in the chair, and I was sitting on the arm of the chair. And it was a very emotional scene, indeed. And it went on and on. I mean, take after take after take. So I went to Elia Kazan and asked him, you know, am I covering her? Am I doing something that's making the scene difficult? And he said, oh, no, it's going just fine. No problem at all. He said, I'm just terribly curious to see if she can drop a teardrop on exactly the same syllable every time.
I don't think she had a great talent, but she had a great determination. She would do anything to be good. She was tough. It's a tough character. And also, she was very upset in her own personal life, and I think it worked out well.
Let's turn the light on in here.
Which light? What for?
This one here with this paper thing on it.
What did you want to do that for?
So that I can take a look at you good and plain.
Of course, you don't really mean to be insulting.
No, just realistic.
I don't want realism. I want magic.
Magic.
Yes, magic. I try to give that to people. I do misrepresent things. I don't tell truth. I tell what ought to be truth, and if that is sinful, then let it be punished for it. Don't turn the light on.
I enjoyed making the film of Streetcar Named Desire, I think particularly because I'd had the opportunity of playing it for 9 months in the theater, and therefore I'd had ample opportunity of studying it very, very thoroughly. Moreover, I loved everybody I was working with, and I enjoyed that, but I've really been very lucky because I've enjoyed almost every bit of work. I don't mean to say that I've been satisfied with what I've done, but I've always found it interesting.
Vivien Leigh won her second Academy Award for Best Actress. She was not present to accept the award. She and Olivier were performing on Broadway, alternating Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra with Shaw's Caesar and Cleopatra. The constant work, coupled with her exacting performance in Streetcar, put Vivien's health in jeopardy. When she flew to Ceylon to begin working on the film Elephant Walk, the exotic location and tropical climate exacerbated her already delicate state of mind.
You can tell when she's going to hit the high again, almost within a month. And the demands of every kind gets more and more and more powerful, and sometimes petulance, yes, sometimes rages, but on the whole, it was all very forgivable because she was so enchanting. And it was heartbreaking to see. You didn't feel angry with her if she was beastly to you because you knew she couldn't help it.
She fell apart desperately when she went into Elephant Walk. Then she went crazy. It was sad. They replaced her immediately. It was 54, I think.
When a BOAC Stratocruiser touched down at London Airport, nurses were waiting to take care of actress Vivien Leigh, who was returning home from Hollywood, suffering from an acute nervous breakdown. On hearing of his wife's illness, Sir Laurence Olivier flew immediately to her side and has brought her home for a complete rest. We wish Miss Leigh a speedy and complete return to health.
At the time, no one used the term manic depression. The disease was little understood and treatment was crude. Vivien received a series of electroshock treatments.
Electroshock therapy was used for a period of decades, really, basically to correct a whole bunch of psychiatric illnesses. But really what it was used for at that point in time was to treat severe agitation and psychosis.
And she was awfully thoughtful and sweet and wonderful to people who looked after her. If she behaved badly in the nursing homes and places, she would always write to the moment she got home and apologize and said she knew she'd given trouble.
In July of 1956, while performing in Noel Coward's South Sea Bubble, the 42-year-old Leigh announced that she and Sir Laurence were expecting a child. She left the production on August 11th, and the next day at her country home, lost the baby. It was perhaps the Olivier's last chance at happiness. In his autobiography, Olivier admitted that Vivien's illness and his growing love for actress Joan Plowright made it impossible for him to stay married. He asked Vivien for a separation on her 45th birthday.
He was very patient, I must say. It was 15 years he suffered with her, that disease, which eventually bust up their marriage. He couldn't go on, you know, it was exhausting him. Suddenly being awakened in the middle of the night by being hit in the face with a towel or something. You're playing a huge part. You can't cope.
Vivien Leigh finally consented to a divorce in 1960. The day after Laurence Olivier married Joan Plowright, Vivien hosted a wedding for her chauffeur. She was still in love with Larry, and until the day she died, she preferred to be addressed as Lady Olivier. At 46, Vivien Leigh had achieved great success as an actress, but had lost the love of her life. She was on her own for the first time in almost 30 years.
I don't think she was really happy after Larry and her parted. But she made the best of it. Yeah, I mean, she wasn't going to go and kill herself or anything daft. I mean, she made the best of it.
I got to know her really well then, and what courage she had, and what great love, what a great love affair it was between her and Larry. And although it was over for him, it was never over for her.
Vivien became closer to her daughter, Suzanne, who is now married with 2 sons. She also enjoyed spending time with friends and working on her craft. She performed on Broadway in Duel of Angels with a handsome young actor, John Merivale.
He was a very gentle figure. He liked to do the crossword with her. He enjoyed her sense of humor. He liked all the sort of things that she liked. But he would have been the first to say that in no sense did he ever replace Olivier in her affections.
In 1962, looking for a new challenge, she attempted her first and only Broadway musical.
Well, she wanted to try her hand at everything. And musicals were really beginning to be on the up and up, you know. And so I think she thought, well, I'll try one. You know, she was always very game. She really was.
She said, an actress knows how to move on stage, and the next step is how to dance. And she said, I wanted to prove that I could do these things. And she said, she sang wonderful. It was very low voice.
Tovarich was a box office success. Vivien Leigh won a Tony Award for her performance as an exiled Grand Duchess forced to make a living as a maid. Her next project hit closer to home. In Stanley Kramer's Ship of Fools, Vivien played an embittered divorcee on a ship full of unhappy people.
I can't settle for things. Bernard Shaw said it, didn't he? If you can't get what you want, you better damn well settle for what you can get.
What did you want, Mrs. Treadwell?
A useful life. Someone to love me forever. Ridiculous of me, wasn't it?
And what happened?
I chose the wrong man. How many times have you heard that said, I wonder? Oh, he was the most promising, the most handsome. He had the most glorious facade. The facade was all there was. He made me the best-known wife, the best-known skirt chaser in the community. I made life hell for him.
In May of 1967, Vivien became ill with what doctors diagnosed as a return of her tuberculosis. Instead of being treated in a hospital, she chose to remain at home.
And I suppose she thought she could be treated quite well at home, and the doctor agreed. And there was nobody to say, look, you're going to hospital, and so she didn't.
Her condition showed no signs of improvement after 2 months of rest. On July 7th, 1967, after spending a day arranging flowers and entertaining friends, Vivien Leigh died of complications from tuberculosis. She was 53 years old.
Sir Laurence rushed under very difficult circumstances to her room and spent 6 hours with her. Whatever you read, he spent a whole 6 hours, during which time he was quite hysterical.
He was shattered. Jack rang him up, and Lee went round, then saw the body, and he was absolutely shattered.
3 months after her death, family and close friends scattered Vivien's ashes on the pond at Tickeridge Mill, her last country home.
I think she'd be very pleased to think we're still talking about her after all these years.
I'm sure that if Vivien had lived, that she would have gone on acting and entertaining and making the best of her life, because that was her philosophy, not to give in. And it's a good one. Scarlett O'Hara's. Tomorrow's another day.
Vivien Leigh, of course, was never very fond of Hollywood, but after her death, one of the most emotional memorial services in her honor was held just a few miles from here. Director George Cukor described it in 4 words: an outpouring of love. The world's love affair with Vivien Leigh and her most famous movie continues. When the American Film Institute ranked the greatest pictures of all time, Gone with the Wind was number 3, behind Casablanca and The Godfather. And while recent films such as Titanic have made more money, no film has ever sold as many tickets or been seen by more people around the world. Tomorrow, Dick Powell. He was America's #1 song and dance man, then transformed himself into a serious actor and leading producer. Dick Powell, when all premiere June continues Thursday. From Paramount Pictures in Hollywood, I'm Harry Smith. I'll be back here tomorrow.
A&E Home Video proudly presents the biography you've just seen for $14.95 plus shipping and handling. To order, call 1-800-423-1212 or visit our online store at biography.com.
Now, Bill Curtis goes inside the multiple minds of schizophrenics on investigative reports next on A&E. For the web's best bios, log on to biography.com.